Political situation. The political situation in the Middle East immediately preceding the Six-Day War in 1967 was highly tense. Israel and its Arab neighbors were in a continual state of heightened tension. In May 1967, Egypt's President Nasser ordered the United Nations Emergency Force, which had been stationed in the Sinai Peninsula since 1957, out of the region. He also began a military buildup in the Sinai, closed the Tiran Straits to Israeli vessels, and signed a defense pact with Jordan. In response, Israel began a mobilization of its military and made clear its intention to defend itself against any attack. During this time, the United States and the Soviet Union were in competition for influence in the Middle East. The United States supported Israel and was providing military aid. Arab militaries. The Egyptian army on the eve of the war was a large and experienced force. It was led by Field Marshal Abdel Hakim Amer, who had previously served as Egypt's Minister of War. The army had over 250,000 men spread across 10 infantry divisions, 2 armored divisions, 2 independent armored brigades, and numerous independent infantry and armored regiments. The army was equipped with a variety of Soviet-supplied weapons, including the T-34, T-54, and T-55 tanks, the BTR-50 armored personnel carrier, the D-3122mm howitzer, and the RPG-7 rocket launcher. The Egyptian Air Force was commanded by Air Marshal Sidki Mahmoud. It had a total strength of around 19,000 personnel and was equipped with a variety of Soviet-supplied aircraft, including the MiG-17 and MiG-21 fighters, the IL-28 bomber, the Su-7 ground attack aircraft, and the Mi-4 and Mi-8 helicopters. The Air Force also operated a small number of American-made F-86 Sabres and B-57 Canberras. Syrian ground forces were commanded by the Chief of Staff of the Syrian Armed Forces, Brigadier General Mustafa Talas. The ground forces included 1 armored division equipped with Soviet-supplied T-54 tanks, BMP-1IFVs, and BTR-152 APCs, and 3 infantry divisions equipped with BMP-1s and BTR-152 and BTR-60 APCs. The Syrian Air Force was commanded by Major General Ibrahim Suleiman and was composed of 8 squadrons equipped with Soviet MiG-17 fighters and Mi-4 helicopters. In addition to these squadrons, the Syrian Air Force also had an air defense system composed of Soviet-supplied SA-2 and SA-3 surface-to-air missile batteries. Jordan's military consisted of ground and air forces. The ground forces were made up of about 18,000 men, including 8,000 regulars, 8,000 paramilitary forces, and 2,000 Bedouin. The Air Force was made up of about 300 World War II-era aircraft, including Spitfires, Mustangs, Avias, and Morraines. The ground forces were divided into 2 corps, the Northern Corps and the Southern Corps. The Northern Corps was commanded by Lieutenant General Issam al-Rifai and was made up of 2 brigades, the 1st and 2nd Brigades, and a battalion of artillery. The Southern Corps was commanded by Brigadier General Adnan Badran and was made up of 3 brigades, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th Brigades, and a battalion of artillery. The Jordanian Air Force's primary mission was to defend the country's airspace. The Air Force was commanded by Air Chief Marshal Ali Hazza. Aircraft available for combat missions included 24 Spitfires, 60 Mustangs, 40 Avias, and 48 Morraines. In addition to the regular forces, Jordan also had a paramilitary force known as the Arab Legion, which was commanded by British General Sir John Glubb. This force was made up of about 8,000 Bedouin troops. The Arab Legion was primarily used for border security and internal security operations. Jordan also had a small navy which was made up of 2 destroyers, 2 corvettes, and 2 patrol boats. The navy was commanded by Rear Admiral Ismail Sadiq. Israeli military. The Israeli military was well equipped and highly trained. The ground forces were led by Chief of Staff Yitzhak Rabin and included the Israel Defense Forces and the Palmach, a paramilitary organization. The IDF was composed of three major branches: the Army, Navy, and Air Force. The Army was the largest branch and was organized into three corps: Central, Northern, and Southern. Each corps was further divided into divisions and brigades. The IDF was well equipped with tanks, artillery, and anti-aircraft weapons. In particular, the IDF had 300 Centurion main battle tanks, over 500 M50 and M51 Sherman tanks, and more than 500 artillery pieces. The Air Force, led by General Mordecai Hod, was divided into four squadrons: the 101st Fighter Squadron, the 102nd Fighter Squadron, the 103rd Fighter Squadron, and the 104th Fighter Squadron. The Air Force was well equipped with French-made Mystère, Ouragan, and Super Mystère fighter jets, as well as American-made F-4 Phantom II fighter jets and A-4 Skyhawk attack jets. The Navy was led by Admiral Shlomo Erel and was primarily composed of patrol boats, gunboats, and missile boats. Overall, the Israeli military was well trained and well equipped, and was a formidable force that was confident in its ability to defend the nation. The Six-Day War. Hostilities began on June 5, 1967, when the Israeli Air Force launched a preemptive strike against Egyptian air bases in the Sinai Peninsula. The strike destroyed nearly the entire Egyptian Air Force and left the Egyptian army vulnerable. Israel followed this up with a ground invasion of the Sinai, spearheaded by its armored and infantry divisions under the command of General Ariel Sharon. The Israeli advance was swift and decisive, as the Egyptian forces were caught off guard by the surprise attack. Within a few days, the IDF had captured most of the Sinai Peninsula. On June 7, 1967, Israel launched a second set of attacks, this time against Syria and Jordan. The IDF launched air and ground assaults against targets in both countries, and Syrian and Jordanian air forces were quickly overwhelmed. The IDF advanced quickly, capturing the Golan Heights from Syria and East Jerusalem from Jordan. By June 10th, the IDF had completed the capture of the West Bank from Jordan, and the Six-Day War was over. Battle for Jerusalem. The Battle of Jerusalem was the pivotal battle of the Six-Day War. It began on June 5, 1967, when the IDF launched an assault against the Jordanian-held eastern part of Jerusalem. The IDF was led by General Uzi Narkis, who was in command of the Central Command. IDF forces included the 55th Paratroop Brigade, the 890th Armored Brigade, the Mechanized Harel Brigade, the 7th Armored Brigade, and the Jerusalem Brigade, among other units. On the Jordanian side, the defense of Jerusalem was commanded by General Ali Abu Nawaf, with the assistance of the Jordanian Arab Legion. The Jordanian forces included the Jerusalem Brigade, the 40th Armored Brigade, and the 60th Infantry Brigade, among other units. The battle began with an Israeli air assault on Jordanian positions around Jerusalem. The Israeli Air Force destroyed much of the Jordanian infrastructure, including bridges and communication centers. This allowed the ground forces to quickly advance and gain control over the eastern part of the city. The Israeli forces then attacked the Jordanian positions at Ammunition Hill, strategic high ground located near the city. After a fierce battle, the Israeli forces were able to break through the Jordanian lines and capture the hill. The next day, Israeli forces launched a surprise attack against the Jordanian city of Ramallah, which was located 15 kilometers north of Jerusalem. After a brutal battle, the Israelis were able to break through the Jordanian defenses and capture the city. The Israelis then launched an assault on the Jordanian-held Old City of Jerusalem. After a prolonged battle, the Israeli forces were able to break through the Jordanian defenses and enter the city. On the morning of June 7, 1967, the Israeli flag was raised atop the Western Wall, a symbol of Jewish sovereignty, and the Six-Day War was over. The Battle of Jerusalem was a decisive victory for the Israelis, and the Six-Day War was one of the most successful wars in Israeli history.